Welcome everybody to the Snackiecakes.com video review for Jamestown. My name is Chris Casanova.
And I'm Danny Irwin.
So Danny, tell us a little bit, what is Jamestown?
Jamestown is a recently released indie game on Steam. It's a top-down shooter, so it's kind of a throwback to the past. I know I haven't played a top-down shooter in a long time, so kind of interesting to see that out on the scene now. It's also a tongue-in-cheek rewrite of early American history, the Jamestown colony in specific.
That sounds really quirky and weird for the story. Can you tell us a little bit more about the story then?
Sure, yeah. You play as a man named Raleigh, who has actually just escaped execution from the English king, and he's actually fled in his spaceship, a little strange, to the Jamestown colony, which is now located on Mars in the year 17. So definitely way out there, but the whole thing doesn't take itself too seriously. It's they kind of throw in some jokes, and it's pretty funny, and I'd say overall, actually kind of a cool premise for the game. Once you get to Jamestown, Raleigh is actually facing a combined force of the Spanish and Martians. So really unusual. Just kind of continues the quirkiness of the game throughout. Really great though.
So then tell us a little bit more about what the visual style is and graphically. I mean, if it's top-down, is it Space Invaders is bad, or what's the new generation of
Sure.
graphics for top-down?
Sure. Well, it's still definitely lower tech, if you will. I mean, it doesn't look like phenomenal or anything, but as far as like the art and just like the drawing that they've done, I mean, it's a drawn game, and the design that they've done with that, I'd still say it looks really good. I mean, it's very visually appealing, if nothing else, and I think that's kind of key. Obviously, I just talked a little bit about the Spanish and Martian forces, and there's some funny plays on that, the ways that they've kind of made these Spanish spaceships as well as these sort of like Martian aliens and stuff, and kind of the fusion between that, and it makes some of the enemies really interesting, and made pretty much all of the levels throughout the game really interesting to see. And I found that I was always really just enjoying the way that it looked. So.
That's great. So then, what's the gameplay like? I mean, you have power-ups like typical top downs, and really just navigating a bunch of enemies and their projectiles. And what are you exactly? Are you on a spaceship, or what are you?
Yeah, actually, particularly in the last area, it's a really interesting question because you are in a spaceship. I mean, you're playing this man, Raleigh, you can see him piloting his little flying saucer is what it looks like, super ridiculous. But what's actually interesting about that is that if projectiles hit the sides of the ship, they actually just go by it. Only Raleigh himself is, I guess, susceptible to attack, so kind of an interesting thing. It makes a lot of close calls in the games, because you'll be flying around and just narrowly avoiding projectiles because they're hitting your ship but not you. That's actually kind of fun. As far as power-ups, there is a bar called Vault that you charge up by collecting these golden coins that enemies drop, and once that's charged, you can activate this power-up, which initially gives you this shield, kind of this bubble that but absorbs projectiles and also gives you points based on those. And then for the duration of the Vault power-up, you're also dealing twice as much damage. Which is obviously a great kick and really makes some of the boss battles and things a lot easier. You can continue the Vault power up by continuing to collect gold coins, and then you can also end it early by hitting the same button again to give yourself another little shield bubble. So it's both offensive and defensive. Other than that, there's not really any power ups or anything, but the Vault really does a phenomenally good job. Otherwise, as far as the gameplay, a lot of avoiding projectiles. I mean, once you turn up the difficulty levels, and in particular, I mean, there's just zillions of little things coming at you all over the screen from every direction, from all kinds of crazy-looking monsters and ships and stuff. And it's definitely a game of reflex and avoidance, but it does a really great job if you're into top-down shooters.
So does this top-down shooter have a multiplayer aspect of it, or?
Yeah, it does. I should note, though, that it does not have an online multiplayer aspect. There are online leaderboards, but you can't play online co-op or anything like that. Well, which is unfortunate because the game does offer local co-op, and it works really well for that, so it's unusual that they wouldn't carry that over to the online. That said, the local co-op is great. They make it really easy to do. I mean, one person can be using a gamepad, another could be using a mouse, another could be using the keyboard, and it'll recognize all of those things as different inputs. So it's really easy to get even up to 4 people on the same computer all playing this through the levels co-op. You can play. There's 5 missions in the game. The campaign missions rather. You can play all of those co-op, and then there's I believe 20 bonus levels, some of which get ridiculously hard, and you can play all of those co-op as well. So there's definitely a good space for the online play there, and it's definitely a lot of fun to be playing with other people.
Is there any unique aspects of the game that multiplayer brings? I mean, is it different? Like Portal 2 had an entire separate campaign for it? I mean, it's the same kind of concept, or you play through the same thing?
You play through the same thing. I mean, really, it's kind of just that aspect of more, more enemies, more projectiles, and then just having to work together to fight tougher enemies. So it is the same thing, but, it's a simple, inexpensive game, and it's really a great time nonetheless.
So how hard is this game, and what's the kind of replayability for Jamestown?
Sure. Actually, hardness is kind of interesting. It has 6 difficulty levels, so it can go from being actually very easy to, almost impossibly difficult. There are 5 campaign missions, and you can play any of them on one of the 6 difficulties. It goes from normal or something all the way to legendary, which you have to unlock after playing through the game and earning so many points and everything. And that actually, as far as replayability, that really factors into that because there's a lot of replayability there. I mean, it's the sort of game it's fun to pick up and play again and to play through levels you've already played through, particularly if you're ranking up the difficulty and just kind of seeing what new surprises that keeps in store and almost shocking yourself at how much better you've gotten at the game, and now you're so able to avoid just, the chaos that's kind of coming at you all the time. Another aspect that kind of helps out the replayability is that there are bonus levels that you can unlock as well with kind of in-game currency. There's 20 bonus levels, and they range from missions where you fly through rings, to missions where you have to hold off enemy invaders for so long, to missions where you have to rack up so many points, and they really add an element of diversity to the game, and some of them are also impossibly difficult as well. So if you want to get through all of them, you're definitely be finding some replay value there. And then finally, there are actually a total of 4 ships in the game. And it's a different experience playing with each of them. I mean, there's subtle differences. It's really, as we've discussed, there aren't a lot of bonus powers or anything like that. So none of that is changing. You still have your Vaunt power and everything like that. But your weapon changes with each ship. And it really, one thing that I found really striking or interesting about this game was that unlike other top-down shooters, we were kind of always purchasing that next ship, which is just a little faster, a little stronger, does a little more damage. It's just always kind of linearly better. In this game, none of the ships is necessarily better than the rest. They just have a different play style. And so, one might have a wider spread on its gun, while another is more powerful but a little bit slower. And it just depends on how you enjoy playing. And I think that helps with the replay as well.
So what kind of people will like this kind of game? Because some people go for indie games, and some people go for blockbusting Crysis 2 kind of games. So what exactly? Who will this appeal to? Sure.
Well, it's definitely. As you said, Crysis 2. It's definitely not a AAA game, and if you're into big graphics and big explosions or FPSs or something like that, it's definitely none of those things, and it's gonna find its own niche community. Definitely not as much of a broad appeal as say the FPS today. Who is going to like it? Well, if you've played top-down shooters in the past, and it's obviously it's going to depend on how you enjoyed them then. Top-down shooters used to be huge. There was all kinds of games, and they were really a successful genre, if you will, in PC gaming. So if you're old enough to remember those kinds of things, well, maybe you'll enjoy it a lot. It brings back all those kind of old memories and does its own great job of kind of yet carving out its own experience. For those of you who have not tried any top-down shooters, you have to wonder, do you want a game that's a little bit more casual? It's not the sort of thing you're going to sit down and play for 10 hours straight. It's not going to totally engross you, but you're going to have a lot of fun while you're playing it. It's easy to pick up and play and then also drop off and join up at a later time, which is kind of nice. It has that sort of convenience of access, and it's really just a very simple concept, but generally engaging. It's a reflex game. You're avoiding a lot of projectiles and stuff, but also battling some cool monsters and just kind of having a casual but enjoyable time.
Well, there you have it. Thanks for joining us for this video review, and please stay tuned for future content updates on Snackiecakes.com.
Thanks a lot for your time.